Gotta clear the throat. Get ready. Mentorship team, here we go. Good evening, Mentorship team. Coach Cliff, we are live here covering your questions and going over your training in Training Peaks. So this is the Mentorship team where you're able to ask questions, text them into me, and when I'm doing things right, I want you to give me a thumbs up and let me know that I'm answering your questions appropriately. So we got lots to cover tonight. I'm pretty excited about it because we're covering a bunch of events and races that are happening this weekend. We have the Daytona 70.3, we have Indian Wells 70.3 happening this weekend, so lots of great stuff. I'm going to start off by saying I've got some good feedback from the team, and I produced a form for you guys to give me some feedback and information, and for our coaches as well, about how your A priority races are going. So going forward, I posted this on Facebook, that we're going to be giving you updates and result kind of information based on your performances in your races, your A priority races. So each 6 months, 3 months that you're building up towards that A priority race, we want to give you that feedback in Training Peaks. So there's a note and in there that tells you in Training Peaks exactly how to give us some feedback and information so that we can record that for you. So the other big piece of information that I'm going to be helping you guys with is in our communication. So it's come to my attention that I can't see a lot of your questions sometimes, which really stinks. So when I'm on the calls here, my software that I use to help ask questions and get coordinated with you guys doesn't always pull up the most recent questions. So for now, I have the old school method, if you call it old school. I'm going by my phone, so I can at least see every question that's coming through, watching it just like you guys do, giving thumbs up, giving likes, and that sort of a thing. So if you don't see something happening and you have a question, or I'm not answering it, it's not because I don't want to, it's because I didn't see it. So moving forward, I think having this in front of me here to be able to go over your questions will make sure that I don't miss anything in particular, okay? So if you can see the screen and see everything that's happening, give me a thumbs up and give me a like and let me know that you're seeing what I'm seeing. So I have this Belgium criterium here that we're watching at the moment because what we're talking about tonight is fairly timely with this, which is training with power and power basics, power 101. There are a lot of reasons why we use power in training, and I want to give you guys some ideas on why we use power and how to use power, and kind of just an introduction, but also maybe a little bit more advanced stuff in there too. So I know most of you are training with power at this point, which really helps us figure out not only the bike but also the run. So it's a very good thing for us to be using in your training and in your racing. So why do we use power? Well, power is absolute, and a watt is a watt, and it's definable, and it's measurable, and it's translatable. So we use it because we can always say a watt is a watt. Heart rate is very fickle. It can go up, it can go down based on your training, and so we really use power because we can quantitatively say apples to apples. That's how we look at things here. So a fair bit of warning about power. First rule about Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. When you know somebody's power, you know exactly where they stand, you know how fast they are, you know kind of who they are as an athlete. It used to be back in the day that we actually didn't really talk about power all that much because not many people had it, but now that if somebody talks to me today and says, hey, I don't have power, I know right away that they can't be quite as competitive as they actually could be. Or as successful necessarily in their endurance life. So we know that power is something that's not going to go away, and it's something that we have to use as a strategic advantage towards your racing and your training. So let's talk about power a little bit more in depth. So there is an interplay of power and pace, and heart rate is critical to our athlete's success and using zones and things like that. And power is measured at the crank, it's measured at the hub, it's measured at the pedal, and the accuracy depends on how close you are to the source. So you always want to be calibrated when you're using your power meter. So a high level view, power helps you monitor your improvements, guys, and it helps you cut down on training time by creating, more focused efforts. And basically, those athletes that don't have that are really at a disadvantage. So I'm going to pause there, make sure that you can see my questions coming through. I just want to make sure that, because I keep asking and putting in these smiley faces. There we go. Somebody's giving me some likes. That's perfect. That way I know you guys are out there, and I know that you're able to, see what I'm doing here, and because I don't want to not be able to answer your questions every week. These are really important. Okay, guys, so moving on with the power base. I don't see any interrupted training questions here just yet, so I'll just keep rolling through it here. We're talking next about normalized power versus average power. So average power is basically just the average of your watts over a ride, and that normalized or pulls in a lot of goose eggs in terms of zeros. And when you look at average power, that's really not a great representation of how the ride went. And a true representation of how the ride went is actually normalized power, which takes into account the physiological cost of an effort. So it smooths out the effort, and it says the entire ride would have been this hard if we had held it very steady. So it takes into account all that pops and drops of hills and things like that, and allows us to normalize or smooth it out. So I'm going to pause there. I really don't know if I'm getting your questions because I don't see anything coming through. I know we've got 3 folks on here. Can somebody just write me a comment so I know that you're there? I see Mike Hawk is there. Mike, give me a shout out and let me know that any kind of question at this point. That way I can keep on rolling with this because I'm trying to make sure that you guys are able to see the questions. And if I'm not, I'm going to restart here so we can go. Oh, okay, good. All right, awesome. Whew. All right, so questions are coming through loud and clear. All right, game on. So I'll keep talking about power here. Here we go, guys. So normalized power, as I said, is a more true representation of your output. And normalized says that we take into consideration the pops and the drops of a ride, and we smooth it out, and this is what it's going to be. The definition of how we calculate normalized power, well, it's a pretty advanced calculation. I'm going to give it to you guys, but you're not going to like it. And if you were to actually try and calculate this, it's a 30-second rolling average of power, and that's step 1. Step 2, you raise these values to the 4th power, and your 3rd step is to average these resulting values, and then the 4th step is to take the 4th root. I will tell you as a coach, I have never done this, never. So just so you know, normalized power, we use the software and we let that calculate things. So you want to use normalized power to find out what your true representative cost actually is. Okay, so I've got some questions in the queue here. Let's go ahead and answer them here. So Shannon says, just wondering what I might be doing wrong with Zwift and my CompuTrainer. I can't find the Training Peaks workouts into Zwift. I know the TP app is open in Zwift as it's allowing me to open Training Peaks Jersey. So I'm not sure why I can't get to the workout. So Shannon, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but I will tell you that when you have it set up correctly, you should be able to see all your Training Peak workouts on that day flow right into the app in Zwift, and it's right up at the top. And if you don't have any workouts planned for the day, or if they're perceived effort-based, you won't see them, okay? So yeah, there is a lot going on in Zwift, so you do have to have some patience in going through it. Great question, because we really are starting to get into trainer season here, and Zwift is an important one. I've been using the Wahoo Element and really enjoying that because it pulls in the Training Peaks workouts straight into it. But Zwift is another great one that I really like using too. So, all right, let's go back and answer some more questions that you guys have. All righty. Okay, So next question, Durst says, thank God we have a bike computer to figure that out. Exactly, yeah, it's pretty heady stuff. Shannon says, when you go to workouts in Zwift, you may need to scroll, or Mike says you may need to scroll down to the bottom to look under. Alana says, I'm going to need to find an indoor pool. My blood has thinned out too much for these brutal Southern California winters. Yeah, I mean, we're all soft here in SoCal. It's pathetic. I mean, back 2 years ago when I lived in Connecticut, let me tell you, I had thick skin, but I got to agree with you there. It's hard. You get adjusted to stuff. Talk to Shannon. She knows all about how cold it is and how hard it is to be training in the winter. So that's why she has to master Zwift. And I know you, Shannon, you got into some group rides by accident. It sounded like that's pretty cool to get involved with as well. If you can find a watts per kilo that you can match with a group ride, that can really complement your workout. And you're doing stuff like this, riding criterium and racing and training, indoors, just like this, which is a heck of a lot of fun. So Zwift is where it's at, super safe, great way to push yourself, and awesome place. Steve, what's going on? Good evening, Steve. I hope you're doing well. Steve says, any tips for picking up cadence on the run? Anything to focus on besides a shorter stride? So one good way to pick up the cadence and get yourself running a little bit faster and get better foot turnover is to actually do what we call striders. So striders are these very short bursts that you run really fast for 30 seconds and you build up. So you start slow and then you pick up speed and you go fast and then you decelerate on the back end. So striders would be a really good way for you to imprint good foot turnover. When we watch little kids run, that's actually how they get that good speed and form, is it's very natural. So we want that natural cadence, natural turnover, and that's how that's a good way to get some good cadence going on the run. The other way to do it is to take your foot pod, put it to your shoe, put it on the top of your shoe, and go onto a treadmill, attach it to your shoe, and put the Garmin right there in front of you, and that way on the treadmill you can see your cadence. That's another really good way to do it. Okay, scrolling down, Durst says, is it okay to go on a group ride with Team Wadi, or does it let them know what power I have if I join? Well, it will let them know what power you have if you ride by them. I think you can actually see it on their screen. They can see it on your screen, but not necessarily. They're not going to know your power. But yeah, it's absolutely okay to go for group rides with Team Wadi. That's super cool. I think that's a great way to get motivation, training harder, getting faster is by doing these group rides. So I think that's super cool, Durst. So Shannon, I think we covered that. Went through that question. Okay, cool. So did you guys hopefully all get to see the post about the race reviews? I'm excited to introduce that to you guys, and now that I'm able to see your questions, I think we addressed some limiters with the mentorship program. And anytime that there's something that you guys really want to have addressed, I want to make sure that we have a good program here that gets you fit, fast, and information when you need it. So for your plan or for here on our calls live. Okay? All right, so let's jump back into a little bit more about training with power and thinking about different things with power. That's our topic of conversation for the evening. So power versus heart rate. Power may vary greatly within a season. We can see it go up from, 200, let's say, is your FTP, and maybe it goes all the way up to 260. And heart rate's going to stay fairly stable. So your heart rate zones are going to stay fairly stable. Your power zones are going to go up and down. They're going to accordion up and down pretty quickly. So when we are talking about heart rate, two athletes may have the same threshold heart rate, but they're going to have different power zones, just so you know. When it comes to training with power, as you guys know, everything's based off of FTP. Just because you're in power zone 2 does not mean you're in heart rate zone 2. The two of them are actually distinct and unique individual energy systems, and throughout a season you will see a huge variation in power and very little variation in actual heart rate changes. Okay, Mike says, I like it. Thanks for putting it out there. Very helpful to have coaches' feedback after our A race. Thank you, Mike, for that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Durst says, there's an event coming up where over a few hours, a local tri club is doing a 10K swim, 10,000 yard swim, 1,000 yards at a time. If I did low RPE/low zones, would that be okay training? I will say this about doing massive swims, Durst. They are super cool, and they don't have a whole lot of consequence in terms of, will you nuke yourself or get injured? I'm not worried about you getting injured. Probably you'll be a little bit tired, but I think that if you have the desire and the time to do it, a 10K swim is pretty epic, and you might want to do a little more build up to it. I hope it's not like in the next week or so. That would be bad. So let's say. Hopefully you can build into it a little bit. And you said, Durst said, an event coming up where over a few hours. Okay, not in a few hours. That's good. Yeah, so I would say, Durst, make sure that you are able to build up to that a little bit more, because that's a lot of yardage. You may hurt your shoulders, for instance. Alana says she's thinking of doing Super Seal. That's a super cool race. I like that a lot. I like that a lot very much. Mike says, any other tips or advice? Shannon says to Mike Hawk, any other tips or advice? Oops, Super Seal Olympic. Yeah, Super Seal Olympic, that's what I was thinking too. I think that's a great race. Shannon says, yes, I'll message you outside this call. Okay, cool, good. All right, thank you, Mike, for helping Shannon, appreciate that. Durst, please don't look at any of my training. Sorry. Oh, that's code for I'm going to go to your training right now, and let's find out what Durst has been up to. Durst. Whoa, Durst has got a lot of red ink. Fortunately, he looks like he did do something today, so that's good. Oh, Durst. I'm going to have to jump on you there, man. What have you been up to over there? What's going on? Alana says, need to do some life/work catch up. When do we really need to decide about Texas? I would say, you've got time, okay? You really do have some time. It's not until, about 5 months or so from now, so you've got some time. I'd say now is downtime to be focused on whatever you need to do in life. I find that after an Ironman, you really need to refocus, get yourself centered again. So nothing wrong with taking some time down now. Absolute timing, last stop in terms of, when do you decide to be ready and fully prepared depends on your goals. But I would say, Alana, let's try to make a decision probably no later than, let's call it February, but really sometime in January would be ideal at that point, because you really run out of some ramp if you're trying to build up. But it depends on the goals. If the goal is just to finish, then it's no biggie. You can certainly finish. I think even within 10 to 12 weeks we could make it happen, but I'd rather see you perform than just try and finish something like that. So yeah. All right, Durst says, been working 2 full-time jobs, about to go to a full and small part-time, then was supporting cast at CIM. I know, don't worry, it's not the first time I've ever seen red ink on the calendar. Life gets in the way. I know, sometimes we have this pie in the sky of what our plans are supposed to be, and then life gets in the way, messes it all up. Perfectly fine, Durst. Don't get bent about it. Get back into training as soon as you can, and make it happen from there on, okay? All right, cool. So let's see, any other questions coming through? Any specific questions? This is a good, lively call. Good stuff going. We got a good flow tonight. This weekend, guys, I want you to make sure that you're involved with Facebook if you can. Indian Wells, we're going to be out there. A lot of our athletes are racing. I'm excited to go to the desert and be out there, be on the course. We have a Friday night dinner. We have a Saturday pre-race kind of taper and course overview, and then Sunday a little get together afterwards. So I'm really pumped to bring you guys some coverage of the race and our athletes out there. It's going to be a really good time. The temperatures are going to be a little cool at the start, but I think we're going to be good to go once the gun goes off. Maybe no swim, we'll see. I think that we'll hopefully be pleasantly surprised with the swim, even though there's a lot of chatter that there may not be. So we'll see. Okay, moving back into training with power, and have a nice criterium race here. Just cranking away in the background. If you've ever done one of these, they are super hard and super fast. So training with power, we talked a lot about, the intro to power, but how you calculate FTP, I think I've talked about this a whole ton, but FTP is your 30-minute bike test, which approximates to a 60-minute hour of power. And the way that we call that hour of power, the reason why we can use 30 minutes is we know that when you train solo, you're going to be about 5% less of what you could actually hold if you were racing. So your 30-minute actually becomes then your actual FTP. So that's why I like a 30-minute test, is because it actually very closely approximates your FTP. Next, it is important when you guys are training to be committing to training peaks and giving me some perceived effort feedback for power-based sessions. That way I can calibrate the FTP when I go to create your plan, and I get an idea of how things are progressing for you guys, okay? All right, I'm gonna jump back into our questions. And Denise, what's going on? Good to see you on the call. Hope you're doing well. Dur says, curious to see how Lionel does. What's wrong with the water? It's cold. Rumor is that it's 48 degrees in the desert. So that is 48-degree water is really cold. At that point, it's like swimming in ice cubes. But hopefully everybody does fine, comes out of the water, and follows some of the tips that I gave in our blog about staying warm before a swim. It's all about the core temperature. If you get that core temperature up, no biggie. It can be just fine. Okay, so moving on with power-based stuff. Let's move into the different training zones with power. So there's different zone methodologies. The ones we use here at TriStar are generally we try to use Gerada, and it's a little bit more descriptive in terms of the power zones. So power zone 1, less than 55%, is considered active recovery. Power zone 2, that's where your Ironman happens. For most of you who are doing Ironmans, that's 56 to 75% of FTP. The pros tend to do it up to about 78. Power zone 3, that's tempo. That's 76 to 90% of your FTP. That's your 70.3 type of power output. Power zone 4, that's sub-threshold. That's really Olympic distance type of effort for most people, and that's 91 to 105% of FTP. Power zone 5 is your VO2 max, and that's 106 to 120% of FTP. And power zone 6 is your anaerobic capacity, 121 to 150% of FTP. That's really tough stuff, and that's really reserved for more cyclists. And then true cyclists will also do power zone 7. That's your sprint ability, a sprint power of 150% of FTP plus, which is tough. Okay, so pausing there. Denise says, hi, what's up, Denise? Durst says, I'll bring it back. Team Wadi was a surprise, so I need you to kick my butt this season. Are there any types of power meters to avoid that you've heard of? Any reviews looking at getting Cassidy one, but maybe at a lower price than mine? I would turn my radar towards Power Meter City. Durst, I'm going to text that in here because Josh at Power Meter City has been hooking us up, and I would say, all of them, honestly, plus or minus, are really accurate, and within a pretty good margin of error. I think if you're spending somewhere between $500 and $600 on a power meter, you're going to get something that's going to work just fine and give you good output, and I wouldn't worry about it. As far as kicking your butt, don't worry about it. Going to definitely say the ante has been up, so do not worry about it, my friend. I will take care of you, and plenty of hard sessions coming your way, not to worry. Your facilitated torture has just been up. The ante has just gone up. Okay, good stuff. All in good fun. Any other questions coming through here, mentorship team, as we start to close things out? Yeah, Dirks, I know you got your first power meter from them, and you got is Stages accurate? What do you use? Yeah, I think Stages is great. I think that's it's a crank-based system. The closer you get to the power source, the better. pedal-based systems, crank-based are my ideals. They are really close to the power source. I tend to like stages. I've used stages. I've used Garmin vectors. I use, as you guys know, I love Wahoo. I especially love my Wahoo Element. Not for power, but certainly that's a good way to measure it. Mike says he's good. All right, Mike, thanks for joining us this evening, buddy. Appreciate it. Bummed we won't be able to see you in the desert this weekend, so it's all good. And okay, guys, I think that's all the questions that we have for this evening. Thanks for joining me. I certainly have lots more on the subject of power. I know that this is kind of just an intro, and I try to throw in always a good call for you guys that gives you a little more information than just kind of, the questions that you guys are covering, and give a thread through our training here. Keep in mind, guys, I've been posting on the TriStar team Facebook page about how we have our 10 races for the season. Make sure you vote in there and tell us whether or not you're going to be there. We'd love to know who's coming to all the events. We're starting to really tee up 2019, and we've got some great races in store that we're all going to be showing up for and supporting each other and meeting up before and after and covering the courses in detail. And then what else? I think we talked about pretty much everything else. Okay, Denise, thank you. Denise comes in with her question. Denise says, I have a question. If 3 people are riding at the same miles per hour, how are the watts so different? Oh man, Denise just took it a softball and she just lobbed it to me, and I'm gonna just go like this. All right, great question, Denise. Thank you for that question. So the difference comes down to aerodynamics mostly. So if you have people riding with the exact same power, right, it becomes their rider position. So if they have a lot of frontal area, we're tracking this athlete here, for instance, if he has a greater surface area in the front, he's going to have to, he's going to be slowing down if he's holding the same power as the same and similar athlete to him. So generally it comes down to, honestly, aerodynamics if the riders are holding the exact same power output. Okay? So good question there from Denise. Sometimes it could be a calibration issue for some minor nuances to it. But power, as we say, is absolute. So therefore, when 2 athletes are holding the same power, it comes down to the aerodynamics of the rider that influence things. All things created equal. You have to also look at the tires and the equipment. If somebody has, for instance, gator skins, which don't roll really well, and another athlete has, for instance, zip wheels, then that's going to also make a difference. So it comes down to the equipment and the body position and the aerodynamics. Good question. Okay, mentorship team, TriStar athletes, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your questions. Keep up the good work out there. Make sure you guys save up your questions each week so that you can come back here and ask them, and make sure that we get them answered for you live. And congratulations to our athletes who raced last weekend, and good luck to our athletes racing Indian Wells and Daytona 70.3. And I will see you guys all very soon. Night, mentorship team.